Chest up, shoulders back. Welcome to Revival Fitness, everybody, your home for gains and brains. And today, guys, we're going to have a first-time live reaction to a guy called the Bioneer. I've gotten comments about him kind of peppered in my comment section for a while now. I've never actually reacted to one of his videos. Quick disclaimer, guys, I've never seen any of his content. I'm just being transparent with you. So if he kind of talks about things here that I don't know the full context of, forgive me, you can tell me in the comments if I'm missing something. But one of the most popular videos I've seen of his that's popped up in my feed is called You Can and Should Train Every Day.
Conventional wisdom tells us that we shouldn't train every single day. Conventional wisdom tells us that it'll lead to burnout, to overtraining, to injury. Well, I've got just one thing to say to that. Screw conventional wisdom.
Alright, our boy is just squatting in front of the apartment complex at the bus stop.
Just to be clear, I'm all for proper recovery. In fact, I recommend taking a deload week at least once every 6 weeks.
Really? Every 6 weeks? I've talked about before, guys, I think deloads are beneficial in a number of cases, but every 6 weeks. You'd have to be pretty strong, in my opinion, to need a deload every 6 weeks, or even benefit from one. I think, roughly speaking, the goal of training should be to deload as infrequently as possible. Now, of course, life is going to throw some deloads at you, whether you get sick or injured or traveling, etc., right? But if you have sufficient variation in your training, if you have good exercise selection, you're not ego lifting, all this stuff, I don't think the average person's going to need to deload more than maybe 5 to 6 times a year. A lot of you guys who are watching are going to be beginners, and you're not going to have to deload at all during the year. So every 6 weeks I think is a bit much, but once again, I'm coming from the weightlifting side of things. I'm not sure exactly what he does per se.
But that doesn't mean you can't train at all, it just means you're going to back off a little bit.
From what I gather, it seems like he does a lot of running and calisthenics type stuff.
I think this really comes down to how we define training and what our goals are. But I think for the average person, actively discouraging any sort of movement is a bad call.
That's what I like to see, the weights.
And yeah, you shouldn't attempt your 1 rep max on the squat or the bench press every single day. That's like asking someone to run a marathon multiple times a week. A 1 rep maximum is max effort by definition, and this is something that will severely tax the nervous system. So yes, you'll need some time to recover. Well, training can be anything. It can be walking, it can be light jogging, it can be play, it can be working on skills. Training can be 5 minutes of bouncing a tennis ball against a wall. Great for hand-eye coordination, great for cardio. It can be a bit of shadow boxing to practice your punching technique, or it could be a walk around the block. Okay, so he seems to be defining training more of a loose definition here, not just specifically resistance or weight training. From what I gather here, he's sort of like a jack-of-all-trades type of fitness channel. Doing any of these things will get blood flowing around your body, burn calories.
I'm going to turn into Bart K here. Calories are heat. You cannot burn heat.
And provide your nervous system with the important stimulus it needs to move better and more safely. And now let's take a moment to talk about today's sponsor.
Uh-oh, guys, he's advertising a product. That means he's bad.
In fact, gentle walking or jogging or skipping can actually encourage and enhance recovery by getting more blood supply to the muscles. And this is another good reason to train in multiple disciplines, because it means you have more options to choose from and more different types of training that you can bounce between.
I will say, when it comes to jump rope, I haven't done that since I think like middle school PE, which I'm pretty sure is like outlawed globally at this point. I've done, I think, 2 boxing classes, not even like really formal, it was kind of just general with a guy I knew who was a boxing trainer. I never got a chest pump in my life, guys, like DOMs in my chest, also in my obliques as well, in my serratus. The day after I did my first boxing class, I was so sore there. It was really interesting, and I would say, in terms of cardio, a lot of guys ask, like, what's the best cardio to do all this stuff? Cardio is very loosely defined, because walking is cardio, right? Walking all the way up to doing a triathlon can be considered cardio. So it really depends on what you like to do, as long as you want to have cardio in your routine. It's really up to the impact level based on what your individual needs are and what you enjoy. So if you like going to play pickup basketball, that's fine cardio. If you want to jog through the neighborhood, that's fine. If you want to do shadow boxing, that's fine. I would say though, and this tends to ruffle feathers, but it's accurate, if your main goal, guys, is to get as big and strong with lifting weights as possible, you're not going to benefit from doing extremely intense cardio along with that. The cardio heads always freak out here. I'm not saying that you cannot do any cardio at all in conjunction with weight training, but if you want to be as big and strong as possible, you cannot be going all out on cardio all the time at the same time as lifting weights. Those are two goals in opposition to each other. They work different types of energy pathways in the body. So you're going to have to pick and choose what you want to be best at. But if you're just a general person who wants to stay in shape and sort of look better, you can definitely do both to an extent.
And this is another good reason to train in multiple disciplines, because it means you have more options to choose from and more different types of training that you can bounce between.
He does make a good point there, because I can tell you this as someone who has trained hundreds of people in the general public in my life. So many people, even if they're not that weak per se, they're still extremely immobile, they're very stiff, their posture is bad. They have all this kind of baseline stuff that really needs worked on before they really have much business seriously lifting weights.
And it also begs the question, how frequently should you be training with max effort in the first place? Wouldn't it be better to train a little bit more frequently, but a little less intensively? Wouldn't that just be more natural? Now, I know there's lots of studies on this.
Uh-oh, the studies. PubMed Ned might make an appearance, but he did just text me he's very busy reading the literature. Don't know if he can make it today.
Lots of conflicting research as to whether intensity or volume leads to greater hypertrophy and strength gains. But I'm not talking about hypertrophy this time, I'm not talking about strength gains for a specific lift.
How dare you?
See, this is where I think a lot of YouTube fitness can actually miss the mark slightly, because these aren't the only yardsticks, the only metrics by which to measure the success of a training program. For the average person who's more interested in just general fitness and general health, training more frequently has a lot of advantages.
So as I just said, he basically made the same point. And you can see here he's doing like tire flips and all this stuff, so he looks to be doing a lot of what you would call GPP work or general physical preparedness. Even a lot of big lifting programs like to implement this too. Conjugate is a famous one. Louis Simmons was talking about general physical preparedness for his lifters. Jim Wendler has talked about the same thing. He wrote 531. Other programs do this as well. But even if you don't have access to flipping a tire, guys, or, the sledgehammer on the tire, maybe like sandbags, you can do general physical preparedness by just like walking a dog or carrying groceries if you live nearby the store. I personally get general physical preparedness on the days I go to the gym, guys. I carry my bag in each hand. It's about a 20-minute walk each way. After about 10 minutes, I will switch hands. So my gym bag is probably about 15 pounds. I'm basically doing like a one-sided unilateral farmer's walk to and from the gym when I go. And something I've talked about before, I think this is a very overlooked fat loss strategy to just expend more energy. You can just stand during the day. And I know for a lot of people, if you're in school or at a job, you don't have a standing desk, this is not going to be possible for you. But you can ask your boss about it if you're at a workplace. But especially if you work from home, guys, that's become much more prevalent now. But simply standing rather than sitting during the day has a number of benefits in its own right. Not to mention the increased energy expenditure if you're looking to do that. You're going to not be in as bad a posture position most of the time. You're not going to be hunching over at a desk. Now, you can have bad posture while standing up too, of course, but overall it's going to be less likely. So that's something small to keep in mind, but if you can do it, guys, I would highly recommend looking into a standing desk.
And the perfect example of this, of course, is the legendary farmer strength. We could equally call this labourer strength, or even dad strength, or mum strength.
That's basically what GPP is.
Someone who works a physical job, moving furniture, digging holes, laying bricks, wrestling pigs, well, they're going to do that every day, or at least 5 days a week. And guess what? Most of them are in great shape, they're really strong, and they don't keel over dead. At least not typically.
Once this channel really takes off, guys, and I get the money, I am going to get a farm. Not only for the raw milk, but to do stuff like this. I want to get more involved with just things that you can do with yardage, so to speak. So like tire flips, sled drags, pushing a prowler. The vast majority of commercial gyms, you're just simply not going to be able to do that. A lot of gyms now have in their functional training area, they might have some space to do that, but a lot of gyms are still catching up to that.
Of course, they also don't look like pro bodybuilders, and they don't have amazing numbers on the bench press. So the difference is that they aren't isolating specific muscle groups. They aren't actively seeking out the recognized stimuli that create muscle growth. Don't just look at numbers and metrics, as they only tell a tiny piece of the story. Think about how much energy you have in the mornings, and at the end of the day. Think about how confident you feel. Think about how much easier certain tasks might have been. how you bound up the stairs.
There are plenty of powerlifters and bodybuilders at high levels who literally do get winded walking up steps. You guys have probably seen too on these videos when these massive guys are talking, they just constantly breathe because they're so winded all the time. It's like Darth Vader, like, so we got 3 sets of 8.
Every rep is slightly different, so they're training more broadly. And because the weight isn't so heavy, there's lower stakes to getting it wrong. But here's the thing, they also probably don't put their back out every few months. They generally have incredible grip strength, and they don't tire out. And by the same token, if you ask a powerlifter or a bodybuilder to try and dig a massive hole 10 days in a row, the person who is used to regular physical labour will do a better job. A much better job.
And something else to note too, guys, I know everybody in the fitness industry always rails on CrossFit, and a lot of that is deserved, mainly because they're just lifting heavy weights for time, which is asking to get injured. But one of the big reasons why CrossFit is so popular and keeps growing in popularity, to be fully transparent, CrossFit is much more mainstream than bodybuilding and powerlifting combined. CrossFit is essentially a bunch of fitness morphed into one, which is one of the biggest issues with it because it's like a smorgasbord of all these exercises. But if you can get away from like the timed competitive aspect to it, you'll see why a lot of people swear by CrossFit. If you don't have one of these terrible instructors who's mangling the Olympic lifts, what are you doing? You're doing a lot of compound exercises, a lot of GPP, mixing in cardio. It's no surprise why a lot of these people swear by CrossFit and why it helps them get into such better shape.
Now, I'm not saying you can't train max effort, because there are plenty of people who have these physically demanding jobs who still lift huge numbers in the gym. We can certainly combine being more active with a strict lifting regime. That said, we do need to carefully consider training in the context of lifestyle. We can't view training as this special bubble that exists outside of reality. Your ability to recover and your physicality will be hugely impacted.
That's what the guys who do 6-day-a-week high-volume push-pull legs, brah. That's what they do. That is something to keep in mind too, because if you go seriously into bodybuilding and powerlifting, one of these things where you just have to get really, really big, I can speak for this myself, guys, especially if you're naturally slim without a huge appetite. You're going to spend a lot of time just eating to get really big and strong. Now, this is where the grifters are going to come in. You don't need to bulk to get big. You can recomp and main gain and just cut and build muscle all the time somehow. No, you can't, okay? But if you want to get really big and strong, guys, have you ever seen those videos when they follow bodybuilders all day? What do? They wake up, they eat again, they work out, they eat, they go to bed. That's all they do. And at a certain level, if you take this very seriously, it's not to say that you can't have any level of a life, but most of your life is going to be that. That's simply one of the trade-offs you make if you want to go very, very far in one of these specialized sort of weightlifting fields.
Think about how this will translate to your performance and fitness 10, 20, 50 years from now. We all know those wiry old guys that are still way more practical and physical than we are when it comes to actual graft. They got here over decades of toughening, thus their gains are more resilient too. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't just train for numbers, train for specific tasks, skills and jobs, and train of course for the sheer fun of it.
At this point we're training for a potential World War III, and if you're somebody who's watching this channel or this guy's channel, you're probably in decent shape. We're going to get drafted first.
If you're not a professional powerlifter or a bodybuilder, then your performance in the gym shouldn't be your primary measure of health and fitness.
If you guys want the truth about how the terms health and fitness have lost their intended meaning, click the video in the top right. I dish some heavy truth there. You might not be ready for it, but you should watch it.
The main point I want to drive home here is that a single day of sitting, of being entirely sedentary, is extremely bad for you. And if you're training, if your coach is encouraging this, then you might want to consider rebalancing some things. It sends whole muscle groups to sleep, it creates tightness and stiffness, it makes you sluggish and lethargic, it slows down your metabolism and your heart rate. We shouldn't avoid any form of training or exercise between sessions because we're afraid it's going to take away from our next workout. Because doesn't that entirely miss the point? Don't live to work out to live.
Nah, bro, it's all about the gains, bro. Alright, so that looks to be the video. And as you guys saw, I agreed with a lot of what he said. I sort of drew my own conclusions into what he was going to say in the video, and he ended up saying those things as well. The only discrepancy could be when he says you can and should train every day. He's not talking about weight training, so I guess he could include in the title weight train. But regardless, it's only a YouTube title, it's not that big of a deal. So all in all, I get exactly what he's saying, and for most of you guys watching, most of the general public, this is probably a pretty decent idea of how to approach health and fitness. You see so many people online who are, right, just complete roided up monsters and stuff, and all they do is just eat, sleep, and train. And that's not bad, there's nothing wrong with that, but it can set a kind of a weird precedent and a misleading precedent of what fitness actually is. So I get what he's saying here, and I'd say overall this is a pretty good video. I've written programs before, guys, for dudes who are currently in the Navy, training to go into the military, they do boxing or MMA. So there's a lot of tweaks you can make even with the general weight training program to accommodate these things. I would say though, all in all, I don't think he said not to do this, but I'm just going to mention it here. Do not neglect weight training. It's going to be the cornerstone of any health and fitness regimen, especially as you get older, not just for aesthetics and maximum strength, but for tendon health, bone health, joint health, low density as you get older, all of these things. So be sure to check out the video in the top corner too whenever I talk about why weight training will always be better than cardio. Another controversial one, but I do stand by that. So this has been it for this video though, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Shout out to the Patreon supporters and the channel members. If you guys have questions about your own training program now and other aspects of the lifestyle, you can hit me up on the Patreon directly or email me for online coaching, custom programs, and consultations. So thank you again, and I will catch you guys next time.